It has been a big week here in the U.S., and while many of you are absolutely thrilled at the outcome specifically of the presidential race, roughly half of the population is discouraged by the results of the election this week. We have our life coach, Pat Barone of Catalyst Coaching, back with us today with some advice on dealing with disappointment. Pat, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Obviously, disappointment not something that just applies potentially to your feelings about how the elections may or may not have gone this week.
Absolutely.
Daily.
It comes into everything. It comes
Yeah.
into jobs, relationships, career, all kinds of disappointments happen along the way.
How often are you finding with folks that you talk with disappointment is disabling them from moving forward?
I think it really can get confusing for people. One of the first things that people tend to do is confuse that root emotion of a disappointment.
Okay, so
and
you
they
say
try
you
to
need to
justify.
identify.
Yeah, you really need to identify that it's disappointment because you can confuse it and obscure it and pretend it's not happening, and you can get into a lot of other reactionary emotions to it. Blaming people, feeling really upset about the outcome, anger, things like that can get confused.
Okay, so you say acknowledge the risk, the commitment, or the contribution. What do you mean by that?
Well, if it was a relationship, for instance, you took a risk, right? And you did something. You might have been very involved in the campaign and you may have committed a lot of time and effort. You had a lot invested in it. So acknowledge that you did commit that or you did risk something.
And then you say harvest the lessons out of that. So this is a process here. You're saying this is maybe like a 5-step process you need to go through that to
Right.
get forward. Okay.
Right, and harvesting the lessons basically means that you look for what you learned, how much more aware you are as you're coming out of that relationship. With the American people, for instance, they're growing as they rock and roll back and forth through the party system and the elections and everything. You were growing as a nation. Our collective consciousness is growing, so you look for that.
Well, and I know there's a lot of discussion today amongst Republican, pundits about what can we learn from
Absolutely.
this, and perhaps the party needs to change. All those sort of discussions are happening.
Absolutely, and that should be happening. That's exactly what you should do, is look for the lessons and assess what's going on
Okay,
there.
focus on a proactive response. I think this is where a lot of people get stuck.
Well, and that's where, you're hearing the things on the news about what to do next. What's our next step? How do we change? How do we, respond to this differently? Responding is always better than reacting to something. I try to get my clients to understand that.
What's the difference?
Response is positive. Think of a drug. If you respond, you get better. If you react, you get a lot of other symptoms or problems. So you always want to respond in a positive way.
Okay, and take action. I'm getting a wrap, but last word on taking action?
Well, again, you want to make sure that that doesn't develop into bitterness, that you maintain a positive attitude, that you keep moving forward, and you take the lessons and learn and grow from it.
All right, some good reminders for a lot of folks today, and not just in regard to the elections. Pat,
Absolutely.
always great to see you. Thank you so much. We'll
Thank
post that
you.
online if there's anybody you want to forward that to later today. Still ahead at 11.